All right, my name's Dave Hartful, and I'm with the website Black Leader Analysis. It's a WordPress site. If you could, please like, subscribe, and also, if you can, donate through PayPal. And the email address is sdandrace@gmail.com. So I'm going to give you some thoughts on the ADOS movement and also my thoughts on reparations. So now with a lot of these presidential candidates, Marianne Anderson especially, Julian Castro, Cory Booker supports baby bonds, Kamala Harris supports tax breaks for ADOS, and ADOS stands for American Descendants of Slaves. So we're doing a lot more talk about reparations now, and I do like that we're talking about reparations. I think we do need to have conversations about allocating money specifically to people that descend from slavery, like myself, in America, because our group is significantly economically disadvantaged. So the amount of poverty you see in the black community is not anything near what you see in the white community. The stats, of course, the PDF to read would be the Racial Wealth Gap study by Sandy Darity and Antonio Moore. It's available online. Just type in Racial Wealth Gap, Sandy Darity, Antonio Moore. The paper comes up, and it's talking about the wealth levels of the black community. So half the black community is worth $1. That means that there's no net wealth in half the black community. And the richest 1% of the black community only has $350,000 hard. So $350,000 in total assets, that's barely middle class with white people. So, I mean, we need to really be realistic and really understand the position that black America is in and be realistic about the fact, can black America really survive as a collective in a country, in a super capitalist country with at best $350,000. So that's a conversation that needs to be had. But we have an election coming up in a year and a half. And the way the country is going, it's like derailing. And it's not just because of Trump, it's because of GOP and conservative policies in general. But I also don't want to get caught in a loop where we're throwing very good candidates out that have a chance of winning, like Bernie Sanders, because we're pushing for reparations. And the style of reparations pushed by Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, I'm not sure how realistic it would be for anybody to really take on as a party platform or a candidate platform. So Yvette Carnell from BreakingBrown.com and then Antonio Moore from Tone Talks, the reparations plan they're talking about is not just a cash payment. What they're talking about is endowing HBCUs in perpetuity, having some kind of free therapy for black people so you can work through a lot of the trauma, and even more than just that. It's a large list of things they want. And would almost make black folks just kind of wards of the state for just an indefinite amount of time, where we're just given enough money to really just survive. And that's not really going to be a realistic thing for anybody who's not a black American to push for. And the bottom line in politics, you either need to have half of the country, of the voting public, supporting an initiative, or you need the moneyed interest to support an initiative. And the reparations plan that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell are putting out there, I don't believe either group of people is going to want. Now, on the other hand, a guy like Bernie Sanders, who's pushing for Medicare for all, free college, jobs guaranteed, that's stuff that half the public, or almost half the public, all wants right now. And that would be not a fix for everything in black America, would make black America a lot more stable than what we are now. And so when you have a webcast or a YouTube show like Yvette Carnell had, kind of putting Bernie Sanders down, I think that's a little short-sighted, because Bernie Sanders has a very good chance of winning, And if we just kind of toss him out because he's not going to get on a plan as radical as what Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore are doing, then I just don't think that's a good idea. Now, I'll be completely honest. I did campaign for Bernie through Democratic Socialists of America in 2016. I've already given to his campaign, and I have been following Our Revolution for the past 2 years. So I am a Bernie guy, a Bernie bro. But even with that said, I think it's a little bit short-sighted to toss this guy aside because he's not signing up for an extreme reparations plan. A lot of the candidates that are signing up for the reparations plan, they're not signing up for what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell are signing up for. If you watch the Antonio Moore talk with Marianne Anderson, her idea of reparations was $10 billion, which is nowhere near enough. And her motivation for it is the spiritual healing of America. It's not to make black people whole. So it's it is somewhat of a white guilt type of initiative. And she's trying to assuage this guilt or this spiritual deficit, however she puts it. And so what's going to end up happening with Marianne Anderson is she's going to give some partial reparations. It's not going to be enough. And then they're going to say, oh, black folks are ungrateful or they can't handle money because we got some money but not enough. And that's assuming that she even is a viable candidate, which is not even, no one's even sure she's a viable candidate. She's having a hard time raising enough money and getting enough signatures to get on the debate stage. So, so right now, we're in a situation where the one candidate who's talking about it the most doesn't really have our plan at heart, and she's more on some, cosmic, spiritual New Age stuff. So, yeah, I really don't think I can throw my support behind her. Now, she was on Tone Talks, and you can tell she was wanting an endorsement because she is, if you're wanting reparations, that's about as good as you're going to get. She couldn't get an endorsement. So a lot of these candidates are talking about reparations, and they're candidates that aren't really viable, and they're doing it to get on TV. And I'm afraid once they get their candidacy up, they're going to abandon this thing. So if you do want reparations, you need to pick either Marianne Anderson, Julian Castro, Julian Castro, or somebody like that. Dump all your time and attention on those people so they can get on the debate stage. They don't get on the debate stage, this reparation thing dies in a week. This reparations talk dies in a week if they don't get on that debate stage or don't have a shot at getting on the debate stage. So either you need to pick one of them and go hard for that candidate, or you need to pick a candidate like what I want to do that wants a good social safety net program, free college, universal Medicaid, Medicare for all, jobs guarantee, a candidate like that, and put your effort behind him, because this 2020 election is not something we can lose this time. And by we, I mean the progressive wing of politics, not just black folks. We can't have another conservative candidate in there. We can't get Trump back in there. We also can't get a conservative Democrat like Kamala Harris, who her whole career is a prosecutor. She had a law degree from Howard University. There's a ton of stuff you can do with a law degree from Howard University other than lock black folks up. And she went out of her way to lock black folks up. And we need to be real about that and honest about that, and not just say, well, she has the right platform now. We need to look at the last 2 years she was in the Senate. What did she sponsor? Not what she vote for. What did she sponsor? Did she go out on a limb to put forth any progressive policy? Tulsi Gabbard did. She put forth policy, stop funding terrorism now bill. She went out on her own to go to Syria and see what it was like. And she, took some flack for that. And she's coming back saying what we should do about Syria now. Has a long 6-year record of being against interventionism. Okay? Elizabeth Warren, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's her baby. She spearheaded that and got it done. She's went hard on Wall Street numerous different times. So she has 6-7 years of being about her business. So I'm not going to support anybody who I don't see with years of experience putting forth progressive policy. And I think we need to concentrate on the social safety net right now, because we can build a coalition that's going to be half the electorate. That's what we need. We need a coalition that's going to be half the electorate. I understand that we need to have, on some degree, a separate ADOS platform and understand what policies work for ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves, and what policies don't work for American Descendants of Slaves. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about electoral politics. If we look at Dr. King, for example, at the beginning of his career, it was Southern Christian Leadership Conference, always a multiracial group of people pushing for the end of segregation. Once he transitioned from that, there was a point he moved towards the Poor People Campaign. That would include poor whites from Appalachia. It would include Latinos that were in America at that time and black folks, and they would all make a coalition to build a better America for the poor, because he understood that black politics only takes you so far. A great book to read on this would be Where Do We Go From Here? Okay, so in Where Do We Go From Here, he actually breaks down a lot of the problems with the Mississippi Freedom Caucus. So Mississippi Freedom Caucus was started by SNCC, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, who's called Kwame Ture now. But what they were doing were making a black political agenda for black people. Now the problem with that was it could never expand outside of Mississippi, because most states don't have enough black people to support a black-only political party. Within Mississippi, only 9 districts had a majority black population. So even if every one of those 9 districts put somebody in from the Mississippi Freedom Caucus, there still wouldn't be enough people in the state legislature to enact policy. So King understood, even in 1967, the importance of having a coalition. Now, the coalition we need to build isn't the Democratic coalition where we just hop on top of anything Nancy Pelosi says without question. I mean, we really do need a better, more conservative immigration policy. Most of these immigrants coming here do not want to worry about a DOS agenda. They don't want to join up with us. We're not in this together. I get that. We need to talk about that. But at the same time, we can't just have our new Mississippi Freedom Caucus a year and a half before an election and not have, any congressmen elected yet, no state houses, no nothing. We don't have time to build up a separate party from the ground up at this point. I really think we need to focus on building these social safety net programs up. But if you want to do reparations, you really need to pick a reparations candidate and push him, or her, so that's what we need to do. But another thing I wanted to say about the ADOS moniker and what ADOS is about, I prefer it over Pan-Africanism because it puts the validity in being American, which as American descendants of slaves we are. So one of the guys I did a analysis of is William Cross, who made Ethnic Identity Development, or Niggerizance. So in Ethnic Identity Development, he talks about how somebody develops their blackness over time. Now, another thing about William Cross, he actually lived in Africa for a couple years. And after living in Africa, he concluded he wasn't an African. Like, he had love for Africa, he cared about Africa, he was interested in Africa, but he was not an African. And he explained it as he was spiritually African, but not physically or culturally African. And from there, he was able to accept the fact that he's bicultural, and he's American, and he's also black. It's 2 different cultures he's melding together. And that most people are operating in the world that are ADOS. Most of us operate from a bicultural perspective. Most black people, they have a rock band that they like. My barber, she was talking about, she likes Pantera. When I was in college, I listened to Pull of Mud. A lot of us have rock bands we like. We also like hip hop. And that's just how our saliences are. That's what Dr. Cross talks about, different saliencies. One thing I notice a lot of times, if you don't say Pan-Africanist, a lot of times they are monocultural and they take on African culture. But oftentimes they take off this monoculture of Africa. They don't know enough about Africa to really do it right. So they'll change their name. But they'll change their name to something to where they'll have a Yoruba first name, a Zulu middle name, and an Ethiopian last name. To where like no one in Africa is named that. And they're mixing up different patterns and African fabrics that don't need to be mixed up. They're from different cultures in Africa. Because Africa has 54 countries. And each country has a few dozen cultures within each country. So it doesn't work like you can just be African. You have to pick a culture to emulate. And a lot of the Pan-Africans don't really even understand that. I mean, the great thing about ADOS is it makes your validity in being American and the culture that you're actually a part of in an intimate level. Not something you just read about and try to emulate. So when you take on the idea of, yes, I am, American and also black or also African, you're a lot more realistic about how you're moving through the world. And again, there isn't any sign of America falling. They always, a lot of Pan-Africans say, the West is on its last leg. The West is soon to fall. I don't see a lot of evidence of that. West Africa still controls a lot of African means of production. Resources, mineral rights. What's not known by Europe is starting to be gobbled up by China. In Zimbabwe, China is coming in and taking over and taking a lot of those mineral rights. So you're not seeing a whole bunch of people in Africa taking control of their resources. And if they do, they're not going to give it to a whole bunch of foreigners. They're not going to let us come over there and take land that they just fought for. Another thing is most black people aren't ready to go to Africa and fight for independence at the level the African nations are fighting for it. Most black folks ain't going to come to Africa, throw an AK on their back, and go out into the jungle and fight. Like, that's not happening. That's not going to happen. And it's especially not going to happen with people that don't even want to go knock on door to door to get people to vote. I mean, we got to be realistically about what we want to do here. And I do like the ADOS movement in that it helps to give me pride in who I actually am and the culture I'm actually from. And just like Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Nigerians hold up their flag, I hold up my flag, which is the American flag. And I think we should do that. I think we should be proud of that. But I think it's very important to be realistic about the political climate we have now and seeing what we can get out of what we can get right here at the moment. So I got 2 people watching. Do any of y'all have questions? You want to say something? Do you want me to shout out anybody? Especially the person that gave me a like. I appreciate the like, whoever gave me that like. So if you don't say anything in about 20 more seconds, I'm gonna go ahead and shut the video off because I'm gonna go get to some other stuff. So. All right, I'll see you.